Welcome to this video on how to rebuild the clutch pack on your semi-automatic Honda horizontal engine. This also covers many copies of the same style of engine.
Now, just to clarify, the engine that we will be working on is what we call a primary clutch engine, where the clutch is on the crankshaft. And what that looks like is like this, and you can see the adjuster is right here. And so, if you are wondering, it is this kind of engine and not this kind of engine, where you can see that there's no adjuster right here, and the adjuster where it would be is right here. And so this kind of engine, which is most commonly the Lifan 110s, 125s and such for the semi-automatic engines, it is going to look like this. This is not the style of engine I am going to be working on. Hang tight though, I will be doing videos later on it, but this video is going to focus on the primary clutch engine, not this one.
Now, in terms of specialty tools that you will need, or just tools in general, there are a couple of special ones that you will need, and but don't worry, they're not that expensive, and I'm going to go over them right now. So the first, you don't actually need this. Yes, you can take a flat screwdriver and a hammer and bang the knot off, but I just don't recommend doing that. Just get yourself one of these sockets. This is a Castle nut socket. This is a 21mm. And you can see that over here. Where does it say? You can see it right there. It's a 21mm socket, and you can get a dual-sided one. This is if you happen to have you want to work on engines in the future, and this one is for the newer twin clutch style engine. But if you go that route, you will need an extension to attach it to any kind of ratchet because it is quite deep. So you will need an extension too, but this is easy to find. Obviously, though, if you just go with the single style socket, you can get away with without that. You can just attach it directly to your ratchet. Also, what you are going to need is a way to lock the clutch basket. Now, there are many ways to do this. You can use a strap wrench, like that you would use for a large oil filter. Also have basket locking tools, such as the one you can see here, or the one you can see here. I really like the one that fits on the outside of the bell. That is probably my favorite way of doing things, but like I said, you will need some way of locking the clutch basket so that you will be able to untorque the nut. Now, if you want to be lazy, do not use an impact wrench. Let me just be clear about that. And I will confess that I have done that before, and it has worked just fine. However, there is potential to knock the crankshaft out of balance. You see, these are not one-piece crankshafts. They're not all cast or forged into one piece. They include separate pieces that have to be press-fitted together. So the use of an impact wrench can actually knock the crank out of balance, and that will cause a lot of vibration and also reliability issues in the future. So just don't risk it. You also need an impact screwdriver. What an impact screwdriver is the screwdriver that you hit with a hammer so that it acts like an impact wrench. That's exactly what it is. It just uses an impact bit. I recommend getting two types of bits. However, I recommend getting a smaller one that fits well into the screw head. But I also recommend, and it's a relatively small one, but then you can see there's a fat one over here on the right side. I recommend getting a fat one too, and the reason is because the clutch cover, depending on what year bike you might have screws on it, and you might need to use this fat bit and the impact screwdriver to release the clutch cover off of your engine. So if you do have screws holding it in, you will need the fat tip screwdriver. For everything else, however, you just need an 8mm, really shallow, deep socket, but also thin too. You don't want it to be fat on there because you have to reach in to undo the bolts on the clutch cover. This is my personal favorite style of socket, but of course, it's up to you, just as long as it is deep and skinny. And then your basic flat tip screwdriver, crosshead screwdriver, that is good to have. Also, it is good to have a rubber mallet, okay? Don't use a metal mallet when you are banging on. This is to tap the clutch cover free. You don't want to damage it, so you want to have a rubber mallet like so. Okay, so in front of you, I'm going to explain the parts that I recommend purchasing for rebuilding your clutch pack. Now, if you're an experienced mechanic, of course, there are certain things you can get away with. However, the way that I'm doing this, the method I'm doing this, I'm just going to show you everything that you can buy. And keep in mind, these parts are very cheap too. I mean, this entire everything that you see in front of you, minus the metal plates, was about £25, okay? So it's not that much money. Just keep that in mind. So, the first is, in good start here, is your clutch bearing. Now, I'll be the first to say these actually don't go bad most of the time, but I'm one of those people that likes to have backups of things. So, what I like to do is after I remove the clutch bearing and I kind of wiggle it back and forth to test if it's has any a lot of play or not, if it's good, I just put it off to the side. I order a brand new one and I put the new one in my bike. Usually they don't run more than £3 to £5. Now the next part is going to be your clutch springs. Now these, I know the Honda manual, and you can even see the official procedure here. I'm just going to tell you right away it's wrong, because you can have the springs that completely check out to the manual and you're still going to get slippage because the springs have actually lost their tension. If you've got 20,000-30,000 on your bike and you think, oh, should I get new springs or not? Yeah, just do it. It's £10 at the most. And also, if you are going to be doing any kind of upgrades in the future, power upgrades, it's a very good idea to have more to have a higher poundage spring as well. Then for the friction discs, just get you don't have to get Honda brand at all. There are many good reputable makers that make discs, so just get yourself a good set of discs. Don't get Chinese ones. I've done that before. I've literally roasted my pack in 3 months, and I wasn't even racing. It's just don't buy cheap ones. Now you're going to possibly need a new gasket for here. And so these now there's many different kinds of gaskets. As long as it is a resin impregnated gasket like this one, and then you will be just fine. But if it's all possible, I like to get the Honda OEM style gasket like this. You can see it has a rubberized back on it, and so you see it's green here and it's blue here. And I like to get the rubberized one because it makes separation much easier when you take this off. Now this is not from Honda, but this is a higher quality version, but you get the idea. And so I like to get this one if possible, but if not, it's not the end of the world. And lastly, in terms of the clutch cover, since the cover is going to be off, if you're getting up there in miles, it is not a bad idea to get a Kickstarter seal. All you need to do is pop it off with a flat tip screwdriver of some sort and clean out the hole and then stick in the new one, and that is it. So it's not hard to do, and it's not a bad idea to do so while you are rebuilding your clutch. And then the last thing to really watch out for is these metal plates. Now these are technically not wear parts, but this is where the friction discs grab on, and so they do have, of course, if there's friction, in this case you can see it's a friction disc, then you can have a chance for wear, or in case it overheats from too much slippage, then these might warp too. So you might have to purchase these if they do not check out, if they are out of spec, or if they are at all scored or burned. And the last part you are going to potentially need is this gasket right here, and this is the gasket for the centrifuge. I'll explain that in a little bit in small detail, but it is this gasket right here. Sometimes what you can have is the gasket separate completely. This actually happens quite a bit, so if it separates and there's no tears, you can just reuse it, but it is always a good idea to have an extra one of these. And if you like to race, or you like rebuilding your engine very often, for tinkering around like I do, it's not a bad idea to order a pack of these, maybe 5 or 10. Now, also something that I recommend, but it's not necessary, and so this is one of those things where you really are not sure you're going to need it until the moment actually arises in front of you. But if you are in a hurry, or you really have to make sure you get it done properly the first time, I recommend buying yourself some new screws. You can actually use hex head screws, and you can see that here. This makes removing the screws much easier, and you don't have to use an impact screwdriver next time. The reason is because if you see here, this screw is just fine, but in removing these screws, it's actually damaged the heads quite a bit. But you can see that these will eventually strip and break, and so it is a good idea to have the hex head screws instead of these when you reinstall them. Now keep in mind they do have a bit of a taper right here, and so you're going to have to get the appropriate screws, but you can take this to any kind of hardware store and you should be able to match it up. Now, of course, this video is only going to address the disassembly of the pack and reassembly of the pack itself. If you would like, I have many different videos on taking the clutch pack off of the engine. I have detailed videos, I have shorter version videos. I have attached the links in the description, and all you have to do is follow those links and then go to the description in those videos, and you can see there is a clutch specific area so that you know how to take the clutch off of the engine and reinstall it if you are new to this sort of thing. Okay, so onward to the disassembly process. So your clutch should look like this right here, and the first thing that we're going to do is actually flip it over. So you can see here, just flip it over like this, and after we flip it over, locate the groove. Okay, so there's going to be a ring like this, and locate where it is open, because what we are going to do is we are going to take a flathead screwdriver and we are going to push the tip of the ring like this outwards, and then we are just going to pull the ring loose, and I'll show you how that works now. So you see, what we are going to do is we are going to try and push this ring out like this, lift it up over the edge. Okay, I hope we saw that. So push the ring out, lift it up over the edge, and you only need this much to hang out over the edge, and then what you're going to do is grab it with your fingers and just pull towards you. That's it. And it literally just, oops, slippery, so it's got oil on it. So you see how I'm just pulling, and you see how easy that was. There's no need to pop it each piece of the ring out. You just pull it towards you, and there you go. Now that this is out like this, just set the clutch, hold on to it like this, and set the clutch down. Now what you can do is lift, and you see how we are left with, actually this usually comes off too, there you go. Now what we have in front of you is you have the center collar, and you have all the plates. But don't do anything here right yet at the moment. Pick this up like so. Pick it all up, hold it together, and flip it over again. I'll explain why very shortly. Okay. The reason I did that is because there's a bunch of springs here. You see that? They're located in on these four pins, and what you don't want to do is to pick up the plate and then all the springs fall off and roll away. They tend to disappear even if you have nothing else on the floor. It's very easy to have these disappear. So pick up these four springs, put them away. This plate now you can inspect for wear and for excess burning. Now these discs are brand new, so they're not going to be this shiny. So if your clutch is not shiny like this, don't worry. And so these are brand new friction discs. You can see about how much, let's say, meat that they have. They're going to look like this. So inspect both sides. Here is the center disc. And then this center piece comes out completely. And you can just clean this off. I put this in the bin of parts that you want to clean up. And the last disc you can inspect as well. Now what we're going to do is we are going to return to this bit right here. Okay, so at this point, what we are going to do is we are going to remove these four screws. So take your impact screwdriver, like so, and undo these four screws. Actually, what I like to do is undo two of them and take them out completely, and then I release the tension on these and then alternate backing them out so that it comes out more evenly, and you can that's just my opinion, or that's just my preference. Okay, I've already loosened these screws, as you can see. Now, as I was just mentioning, I like to back out one on one side and then one on the other side. This This makes it just easier. I mean, it's absolutely not necessary. But then now what you can do is you can back out. I'm going to need a normal screwdriver for this. So now what you can do is back out. Maybe do like 3 or 4 turns, and then I go to the other side, and then I back out this maybe 3 or 4 turns, and I just alternate. And what you're going to see, if you notice, the pack is starting to recess inward. That is because the pressure of the clutch springs is pushing it back. And so this is the tension that you are releasing. So it's not going to explode by any means, but it will hit a point where it will kind of click, I suppose is the term. Or in this case, it just gently separated. Now lift the bowl straight off and put this into the bin that you are going to wash things off in. Now pick up the parts that are on here. As I said, if you're getting on in miles, just put new springs in, but this pack is relatively new, so I'm going to keep these. This pack has around 7,000, I think, miles, so these should be good. And this pack doesn't slip either, so it's not like I have any problems with it. And then you're going to pick up these 4 springs. These were on this area right here. These, well, I'm looking through the viewfinder. There you go. Here is where these 4 springs are where they originally sat. So take these are your damper springs, and then now take this, and in fact I'm going to show you now what I do to clean the parts off in preparation for reassembly. Okay, so in front of you are the basic main parts that you are going to wash. And by the way, for the spindle, you don't need to take it apart and remove the bob weights and do anything with that. Also, if these bob weights look as if they are really loose, don't worry, that is completely normal. This is the way that they are from the factory, so you don't have to take off this retaining ring and do anything with the bob weights. Now for the disc, there's no real trick to it. Just wipe them off and spray it with some carburetor cleaner or petrol and a towel, and just wipe it down, and do the same for the other disc. Now if your disc look good, you can just wipe them down and then reuse them. But of course, if you're having any kind of slippage issues, it's not a bad idea to put new discs in anyway, because they're not that expensive. When it comes to the bell, what you are going to want to do is, this one is clean, but look inside these recesses. You see now, you can see metal here. But if you look at this picture here, you can see a bunch of black silt, or whatever you want to call that. But that's the stuff you want to get rid of. And so that, what that is that's actually, this area, believe it or not, is your oil filter. Oil gets pumped through here, and this slings, this is spinning on the crankshaft, spinning at anywhere from, 3 to 9,000 RPMs, and so that acts as a centrifuge, interestingly. And so this is the area where particles in your oil will start to accumulate. This is your oil filter. It's not the screen. It is this that is your oil filter. But you want to scrub out these recesses in here of the black stuff that you just saw in the picture. But you also black stuff also likes to, or just junk in general, likes to accumulate in all these areas too. Now the fastest way to get rid of it is actually, here you go, you can even see that I missed a spot, and there you go, there is some dirt in here, some metal that I missed cleaning up. So you want to clean the inside of the basket too. And so the easiest way to do this really is just to scrub with a toothbrush or something. Have a container of petrol, soak this in and scrub with the toothbrush, and then blast it off with carburetor cleaner afterwards. And so that's how you address the bell. If the gasket happened to tear, you want to remove the gasket material off of here. I know you can see stuff here, but that is, you can't feel anything. It feels completely flat. And so as long as you can't feel bits of gasket with your nails, then that is good, and that is clean enough. Now, since the spindle is also part of this spinning assembly, you'll want to do the same with a toothbrush. Clean this off, spray it off with carburetor cleaner, especially in here. A lot of black stuff tends to, a lot of junk tends to accumulate in this area. So clean that off. That is very, very important. Clean the whole thing off. No real trick to this thing here. So that's just, you can wipe that down. The same goes for this. And in here, I found that sometimes you get accumulation of junk in these little grooves here, so it's a good time to scrub that out and clean that out. Also, behind the bearing, I find sometimes gets stuff accumulated, so you want to wipe that out with a towel. Now, if this gasket has torn, what you want to do is you want to throw this away, scrape all the gasket material off of this side, and have your new gasket ready to go. And lastly, in terms of cleaning the hardware, what I like to do is, I find the easiest thing to do is get like a coffee can or something, fill it up with a small amount of petrol, shake it around and make a lot of noise and irritate your neighbors. And then after you do that, this hardware tends to become very, very clean afterwards. And so that's the easy way to go about that. You don't have to take every little bit off and scrub it with a brush or anything. I find that's a waste of time. So I just like to make a lot of noise instead. Okay, getting to reassembly. Now what you're going to do is take your spindle, like so, and take your 4 springs, okay, 4 of these. And you're going to place them over here. This is the area where it has where it's round. It looks like this. Place your 4 springs over. You don't have to match them up from the original, where they were originally. You can put them all on, and no problem there. Now, don't worry about the long springs just yet. We will get to those later, okay? So, now take your bell. And what you're going to do is, you see how there's a rounded edge, and then there is sort of a rectangular edge. And you can see that there is a rectangular edge, a tab on here. That tab is going to go into the rectangular side here. Now, there's only one way for this to fit in, so you really can't stuff this up too badly. But the main thing that you want to align is, you see how there's circles on this side, see? And then you have the circle where the spring is. And these are very technical terms. And you want to align the circles. And as long as you do that, then it will... I can't see very well, excuse me. I'm looking through a camera lens, there we go. So as long as you align the springs with the circular hole, then you will be just fine. Now what you're going to do is take make sure that is sitting like this, and you're going to take your screw and the washer, and you are going to bolt it down. Now what I personally like to do is I like to just do 2 at a time and go a few turns each time to kind of bring it together, because I find if you do that, then it slides together relatively easily. But if you try and do one down too far, then it doesn't. Sometimes it hangs up, and you can put a little pressure on this too to make it easier to screw these down. I find that's helpful too, and just screw it down, kind of alternating. You see, I've got 2 or 3 turns on one side. Alternate to the other side, 2 or 3 turns, and back and forth until you are done. Now once you're here, just put the other 2 screws in, like so. And by the way, I've found that some Chinese engines actually use lock washers on here, but it's absolutely not necessary. But I got to admit, I actually like that. So if you just want to be absolutely nitpicky like me, you might put them on as a little addition, but I'm not going to bother with that this time. And when you tighten these, you don't need to use the impact screwdriver at all. Just give it a good cinching down. Make sure your screwdriver though has a good tip on it. You don't want to round out the inside of these screws. That would be a bad thing. And you want to cinch it down with a good amount of torque, but that is sufficient to keep it there. Now, take your 4 springs. They're going to roll away. I'll just do one of them. Okay, the technique for doing this is a little bit tricky, and so I'll show you the easiest way to do it. Now, this spring has to go into there's going to be a little area. It might not be easy to see, but there's a little cutout inside of this tab right here where the spring can slide into. And so you can see that if we put the spring in kind of at an angle, then it is actually sitting inside that cutout right now. It may not be apparent to you, but that's what it is doing. Now I find the easiest way to get the spring in is to take a flathead screwdriver, and then what you do is you kind of push against the spring, stabilize this, kind of put your thumb and your index finger around this so that it doesn't, the spring can't wobble, because you're going to be compressing it and it's going to want to wobble away. So kind of pinch and use the flat end of the screwdriver as kind of like I guess you could say lid, and then you're going to push the spring inwards. I'll take this out. Push the spring inwards, and then you're going to push the screwdriver down into here like this. And what that's going to do is it's going to align the spring with this tab. And this tab is where you want the spring to go. So you're going to push the screwdriver in, holding the spring, and then you're going to, while still holding the spring, you are going to release the screwdriver, and the spring will boing out and stick to the tab. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to do it in front of you now. So I've got the spring in the recess, as you can see. Try and stabilize this. Push the screwdriver inwards, and push the spring inwards with the flat blade of the screwdriver. Sometimes actually what happens is the spring tends to bind up on itself, and so you can't push it in any further. And if that happens, that's annoying, but you just have to do it again. You just have to get it to where this is obviously not happening very smoothly, and it never does. So but I'm just trying to give you the idea, and you can see how much fiddling I'm having to do with this to get it right. So if you don't get it right the first time, don't worry about it. Try again. So I'm trying to, spring is actually binding up again. So what I'm going to do is just give this another attempt. And the spring is being a little bit squirrely. Yeah, it's binding up quite badly. Okay, we'll try this again. There we go. You see, now I got the spring down. So I got it in, but the screwdriver is preventing it from boinging out into the tab. So what I'm going to do is keep my finger over that, and I'm going to keep my finger over this. I'm going to pull the screwdriver out slowly. So now you go. There you go. Now you see that the spring released into the tab like this. And so that is, and you have to do that for all four of them. Now be careful, because if you drop the spring inside, you actually have to undo all of this and start over again, unless you can wiggle the housing or whatnot and get the spring to fall out. So be careful and take your time. Okay, once you get all four springs in here, and make sure these are tightened down if you haven't done so already, you're going to take the pack and flip it over. And you're going to expose this side of the pack. What you're going to do is the easiest. I'm just going to show you how I do it. Of course, there are other ways that you can do this, but I'll show you my personal way. You're going to take both these. Now, a quick note though: if you have an older style clutch, probably I don't know the exact years, but probably from around 1969 to around the early 80s, you might have oiling holes, and so you will see that here. And those holes, now the newer clutches, they have 3 holes all around, so there's no one way to, there is no way to install this without aligning the oil holes. However, and the old clutches, which, like I said, from around 69, I'm not sure the exact years, but those clutches only had one set of oil holes. And so if you don't align the feed holes, actually, I haven't actually heard any problems with it, but it is just worth noting that there are oil holes that you might have to align up if you have a very old bike. Chinese engines, they have the feed holes in all sides, I've noticed, so don't worry about that. But that's just a little tidbit that you might want to be aware of. So what I'll do is I'll to take this, and the tabs are going to be on the bottom side. You can see these teeth, right? Just stick it in the middle. Now it's not very tight or anything, that's okay. And then the ramps, remember the ramps, make sure that they are aligned with the tabs, and then install that. And you can tell if it's working because it will go up and down if you actuate it like this, see? And that's how you know you have installed it correctly. So in this state, now what you are going to do is you are going to take the bottom disc. That's not it. Wow, that was brilliant. You're going to take the bottom disc, the one with the 4 poles, and just put it in one set of these rectangular tabs, not the round ones. It doesn't go in that way. And don't worry, it doesn't matter which one, as long as you can set it in like this. At this point, what I like to do is just put the springs on the poles, because sometimes you can forget, especially if you are doing this for the first time, and you get involved with something else and then you lose your focus. So put the 4 springs on the poles. You see? Just like that. Now, by the way, you're probably going to hear that you need to soak your clutch discs in oil overnight, and that's absolutely not necessary. I find it's not even necessary to put oil on the discs themselves. It's just the reason why you're supposed to oil the discs, soak them overnight, is because in the older days, clutch material, the friction discs, were made out of cork, and so this material had to expand. It would swell if put in motor oil, and so it would change size. So what you needed to do, and this is from the best of my understanding, because I've never actually worked with cork material before, so this is just from older mechanics and what they have told me from the older days. So anyway, the disc material being made of cork would change size, it would expand, it would swell, and so you had to put it in oil overnight so it would be the appropriate size and wouldn't swell after you put the clutch together. But now, and I mean even recently, or not recently, even quite a while ago, cork has not been used as clutch material, and so you can just put on a coat of oil, just like this, and it doesn't even have to be a liberal coat of oil, and you will be just fine. Regular motor oil. Do not use car oil, though. Car oil has additives in it, and these additives can contaminate the disc surface, the friction disc surface. Use motorcycle oil only, motorcycle specific oil, and to lubricate these discs like so. But I'll just tell you up front, I've actually put together discs, clutch packs dry, just to see what would happen. And I mean dry as in everything was dry, like bone dry. And I've had no problems whatsoever. No burning, no skipping, no broken discs or anything like that. So it's probably not that important. But you don't have to soak these overnight. You don't even have to soak them at all. You can just put a little coat like this, or it's not even necessary, to be honest with you. So what you're going to do, here is the order that the clutch discs go in. And this is going to be the reason that I'm using these again. The ones I just took out is because they're brand new. So there's no reason to put in old discs. There's no reason to replace these. But of course, if you have your old disc, take them out. Also, if they look like they're at 50%, that's fine. Just take them out and put them in a bag and put new ones in there, because it's nice to have backups, because you know it was working before. So if you need some backup discs for any reason, just put those discs in a bag and keep them off to the side. It's really nice to have. So that's something you can do. Sorry, on a note I've noticed this with a few Chinese engines, is that what they do is with the clutch discs, these teeth, now the friction material is held on by glue, a very special glue, but glue nonetheless. And if you do it sloppily, what happens is that sometimes glue gets on the teeth of these discs. Now, that's if you have any kind of reputable maker, they're not going to even pass quality control if you have glue on the teeth. But a cheap maker, they might do that to save on costs. So what happens, I've seen this with a few Chinese engines, is that they have glue on the teeth, and what happens when you put the discs in, they don't actuate, they don't slide up and down in their individual grooves smoothly at all, and you get really rough clutch engagement and disengagement, and sometimes it doesn't engage at all, or sometimes it completely disengages even though the clutch is supposed to be engaged. So if you have a very cheap pack, or if the pack is doing something like that, what I would do is take a look at these teeth and see if there's any excess glue on them, and just scrape it off with a knife or something like that, or with a file, and see if that helps in things going smoother. And by the way, this is how smoothly they should glide over the surface. Okay, you see that the teeth engage. You see there's no, whoops, came off. You see that there's no friction whatsoever on that. So that is how smoothly these plates should be engaged, or should slide on the grooves, just so you know. So what you're going to do is put the friction side material down, the friction disc side down, because it is contacting this metal plate right here. See? So that side, this side, down. Slide it on, like so. Now what you're going to get next is the center disc. And that is the one that looks like this. Has friction disc material on both sides. I have seen some variations of aftermarket discs where this one is actually only metal, and the friction disc, and the one I just put on has material on both sides. So I've seen that, but it's not very common. So if you see that, no problem. It's just a variation. And these tabs will go in the same rectangular tabs as before, just like that. Now what you are going to do is take the other friction disc and take the metal side and put that down against this. And should be obvious to why we're doing that. You see, you want it, there's always going to be friction disc against metal. So you see, so there's a friction side here, so the metal side is going against that. So put that down. Sometimes, there we go. And now what you're going to do is take the final metal side, and you can see this side is the one that has the wear on it, so we're going to put that one down. And you see how you have these 4 holes here, 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 and here. Those are going to go over the springs, or over the poles, well, the same thing. So make sure you align those. So you see how, I'm going to bring this up closer. You see how the pole is right there. You want the hole to go over that. So put that, and it will, and this disc will be a little bit springy. You're going to feel the springs against this disc. You can install this disc backwards if you would like. As long as it is flat enough, you can install it backwards if one side happens to be very scored, and you can get away with that. I've done that, and it does work, just letting you know. Okay, now at this point what we're going to do is we are going to put in the snap ring. So this installation is very, very easy. What we are going to do is you're going to take one corner, well I guess it's a corner, and now there are grooves inside the basket, kind of down in here. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but there are grooves in there. And that is where the snap ring is going to go in. Now find the easiest way to do this is to take one side of the snap ring, push down, and slide it into, get it started and slide it into a groove. So you see now the snap ring is in the groove like this. And what you're going to do is hold it that way and just start working your way around, pushing down and pushing the snap ring in. And you have to keep holding this, otherwise it will pop out. And slide the ring in. It's in the, or get your glove stuck and just work your way around like so until it is snapped in, and this is in, and you can see that and check all the way around to make sure that the snap ring has gone in, and we can see that it has, and so that is good. Okay, now in this state your clutch pack is completely done. Well, that's it for the clutch pack rebuild. If you want to see how to install the clutch basket onto your engine, you can follow the link in the description to the reassembly video, and in the description you can see specifically the clutch section, and all you have to do is click on that and follow those steps in case you don't know. But to keep this video short, I'm going to end it here. So once again, I'm Mini Motorman, thank you for watching, until next time, goodbye.